What if I told you that the drunk, sarcastic mentor from the Hunger Games was once a brilliant, fearless fighter who defied the Capitol and paid the ultimate price? In Sunrise on the Reaping, we uncover the untold story of Haymitch Abernathy, the man who won the deadliest Hunger Games in history and lost everything. This is not just a prequel. It is a story of pain, power, and rebellion. Stay with me, because once you know the truth, you will never see the Hunger Games the same way again. Welcome back to Panem. In Sunrise on the Reaping, Suzanne Collins takes us on a powerful and emotional journey, 24 years before Katniss Everdeen ever volunteered as tribute. This is not just another Hunger Games story. This is the untold story of Haymitch Abernathy, the man we only knew as the sarcastic, broken mentor with a drink in his hand. But behind that cold stare and sharp wit is a heartbreaking past that changed everything. The year is 24B before Everdeen. The Capitol is stronger than ever, and for the 50th Hunger Games, known as the Second Quarter Quell, a twist is announced. Double the tributes. Double the death. Haymitch is just 16. A boy from District 12, thrown into a nightmare. But what he endures, what he survives, will shock you, inspire you, and help you understand why he became the man who trained the girl on fire. This prequel does more than tell a story. It fills in the gaps we never knew we needed. It's dark. It's devastating. And it's absolutely necessary. Get ready for betrayal, pain, and unforgettable truth. This is Sunrise on the Reaping. It was supposed to be a celebration. Haymitch Abernathy had just turned 16. The sun rose over the coal-streaked skies of District 12, and for a brief moment, it felt like any other birthday. He was surrounded by his family, his younger brother, his hard-working mother, and one person who made his world brighter, Lenore Dove. Lenore was not just his friend. She was his peace, his hope, maybe even his future. But everything changed that morning, because that was also the day of the Second Quarter Quell announcement. A twisted tradition, held every 25 years, where the Capitol adds a new rule to the Hunger Games, just to remind the districts who is in control. The Capitol's announcement boomed through every district on large, cracked screens. President Almas, smiling coldly, read from a golden scroll. "This year," he declared, "to remind the districts that 2 lives were lost for every Capitol life during the dark days, each district will send 4 tributes instead of 2. A deadly silence fell across District 12. Double the number of children. Double the pain. Double the death. Haymitch stood still. Even the wind seemed to freeze. Later that day they gathered in the square, boys in one line, girls in another. The peacekeepers stood like stone statues. Tension choked the air. Haymitch looked for Lenore in the crowd. She gave him a small, trembling smile. Then came the drawing. First name, a 17-year-old boy from the seam. Second name, a 15-year-old girl, screaming as they dragged her to the stage. Third name, Haymitch Abernathy. His name echoed across the square like a thunderclap. He felt the world collapse around him. People were gasping. His mother broke down in tears. Lenore's hand flew to her mouth. He walked, stumbled, to the stage, heart pounding, legs shaking. And then the fourth name was drawn. Not Lenore. Thank God, not Lenore. But it did not matter. Haymitch's fate was sealed. He was going to the Capitol, and he was not coming back. Back at home, the goodbye was even more painful than the announcement. His mother hugged him tight, her tears soaking into his shirt. "You are strong," she whispered. "You are smart. Remember who you are." And Lenore, she placed a silver pendant in his hand. It belonged to her grandmother, a small token of District 12's old songs and stories. "I will be waiting," she said. "You have to survive." But how could he? He was not a fighter. He was clever, yes, but how do you outsmart death? How do you outthink knives, traps, and tributes trained to kill since childhood? On the train to the capital, Haymitch stared out the window at the forests, the rivers, the fading grayness of home. His mind was racing. "Why me?" he asked his escort. The escort replied coldly, "Because the capital chooses. And the capital always gets what it wants." Those words would burn into his soul. And so, Haymitch Abernathy's journey began. From a boy with dreams to a tribute with a target on his back. As the capital lights grew closer, as the train sped toward blood and glory, only one question remained. Would Haymitch play their game or break it? But what happens when a boy from the poorest district enters an arena designed to destroy him, and refuses to follow the rules? When the gates opened, it was not just a game. It was a trap. Haymitch Abernathy stepped into the arena, and what he saw was nothing like he imagined. It was beautiful, at first glance. A massive, lush valley surrounded by jagged mountains. There were green forests, a sparkling river, colorful wildflowers. The capital audience cheered at the breathtaking view. But Haymitch knew better. It was all a lie. Beneath the beauty was death. The arena was a meticulously designed nightmare, crafted by game makers to entertain the capital and torture the tribute. The Second Quarter Quell was not just about killing. It was about mental suffering, fear, chaos. Almost immediately, traps began to spring. One tribute stepped into a clear meadow, only for the ground to collapse, swallowing him into a pit of spikes. Another tried drinking from the river, only to die seconds later, poisoned from the inside out. Haymitch quickly realized, this was not just a game of strength. This was a game of mind. He did not charge in like the career tributes from the wealthier district. Instead, he observed. He watched. He learned. And when he moved with purpose. He remembered every lesson his mother taught him. Every story his father once whispered before he vanished in the mines. And above all, he remembered what Lenore had said. You have to survive. Haymitch scavenged, hid, and stayed quiet. While others fought loud and messy battles, he focused on staying invisible, unpredictable. And then, something unexpected happened. He formed an alliance. Not with a fighter, not with a killer, but with a quiet girl from District 7. Her name was Solara. She was smart, resourceful, skilled in climbing trees and identifying edible plant. And most of all, she hated the capital just as much as he did. Together, they built a strategy. They avoided open areas. They tracked movement. They mapped the arena in their minds. But even with all their planning, nothing could prepare them for what came next. Because the game makers were watching. And when they saw Haymitch and Solara using their intelligence to survive, they decided to make it personal. The arena began to shift. Landslides, wild beasts, firestorms, every nightmare they could invent, they unleashed. Haymitch and Solara ran for days, barely sleeping. Their alliance was tested. Their strength was fading. But their will was still burning. Then came the moment that changed everything. A hovercraft dropped a silver package. Inside was a single piece of bread. District 12 bread. Sent by someone watching. Someone who believed. It meant one thing: Haymitch was not alone. The capital could control the arena. But they could not control his mind. And that was his weapon. Haymitch began to set traps of his own. He turned the game-makers' tricks against them. He led stronger tributes into hidden dangers. He used mirrors, rocks, and timing to escape death again and again. And the capital? They noticed. He was not just surviving, he was defying them. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The death count rose. Alliances shattered. Only a few remained. And in the distance, the final confrontation was drawing near. Haymitch could feel it. But victory in the Hunger Games always comes at a price. And in this arena, nothing is left untouched by pain. Haymitch has the mind to survive, but when the capital targets the people he cares about, how far will he go? Will he keep playing their game, or make a move that changes everything? In the Hunger Games, every move has a cost. Haymitch Abernathy had become a problem for the capital. He was outsmarting their trap. He was avoiding their monsters. He was turning their perfect game into something they could not control. And that was unforgivable. The game makers decided it was time to make an example of him. But they did not strike at him directly. They struck at the one thing he still held close, Solara. One evening, just as the blood-red sun was setting behind the jagged mountains, Haymitch and Solara stumbled upon a cave. A place to hide. A moment to breathe. They shared a quiet meal, roots, berries, and rainwater they had carefully boiled. Solara smiled. "I think we might actually make it," she said. And for a moment, Haymitch believed her. But then it happened. The cave began to shake. The walls split open. A spear came flying out of nowhere, silent and deadly. Solara gasped and fell. Haymitch screamed. "No. No, please." He held her as her breathing slowed. Her hands were cold. Her eyes, full of tears and peace. "Win," she whispered. And then she was gone. His only ally. His only friend. Taken from him by the capital's cruelty. That night, Haymitch did not sleep. He sat outside the cave, staring at the stars, burning with grief and rage. That was when he made his choice. He would not just survive. He would fight back. The next morning, something inside him had changed. He was no longer afraid. He began to test the edges of the arena. Literally. And that was when he discovered it. The force field. The capital had built an invisible barrier around the edge of the arena, a shimmering wall that repelled anything that touched it. Most tributes never got close enough to find it. But Haymitch did. He watched a mockingjay bounce off it and fall, lifeless, to the ground. And in that moment he saw it. A weakness. A crack in their perfect system. He smiled. Because now he had a plan. Days passed. The final tributes were closing in. Haymitch knew he was being watched constantly now. Every camera, every drone, focused on him. So he gave them what they wanted. A show. He pretended to be weak. He limped. He coughed. He wandered toward the cliffs, exactly where the capital wanted the final showdown to happen. The last tribute followed him, strong, brutal, eager to win. The capital audience cheered. But Haymitch was not walking toward death. He was walking toward the force field. The fight began, fast and savage. But Haymitch did not need to win with strength. He just needed timing. With one final move, he twisted and flung his axe, not at the tribute, but at the force field behind him. It bounced off, shooting backward at full speed. The other tribute never saw it coming. And just like that, Haymitch Abernathy became the victor of the 50th Hunger Games. But the price? The Capitol was furious. He had humiliated their arena. He had found a flaw and used it to win. And they never forgive defiance. Back in District 12 there was no parade. No true celebration. Lenore was waiting, but Haymitch was not the same boy she once knew. He had seen too much. He had lost too much. And worse? The Capitol was not done with him. Because even after the games, the real punishment had only just begun. Haymitch may have escaped the arena, but can he survive the Capitol's wrath outside it? What happens when victory becomes a curse? Victory. It should have meant freedom. But for Haymitch Abernathy, it became the beginning of a slow, painful prison. He had defied the Capitol. He had outsmarted their games. And now they would break him. Not with whips. Not with bullets. But with psychological warfare. When Haymitch returned to District 12, the people clapped. They smiled. But their eyes held fear. Even Lenore, his beloved, hugged him like someone she could barely recognize. He had changed. The arena had taken pieces of him. But he still had her. And for a brief moment, he thought, maybe I can start over. Maybe I can live. But the Capitol had other plans. It started with the visit. Capitol officials, dressed in white, arrived unexpectedly. Their smiles were cold. Their voices empty. They congratulated Haymitch, and then reminded him what real power looked like. Then came the letters, threats, warnings, pictures of Lenore at school, at home, with her family. Be careful, Victor, they said. We're always watching. And then came the night that changed everything. Haymitch was invited to a celebration in the Capitol. He was told it was tradition, honoring past victors. He was told to smile, to behave, to eat and drink, and while he was distracted, they slipped something into his coat pocket. A small, hidden vial. Later, back in District 12, he found it. A note was attached. Give this to Lenore, or we will give it to everyone in your district. His hands trembled. He ran to her house. She was standing by the fireplace, laughing softly. So alive, so innocent. He wanted to run, to scream, to fight. But he could not, because the Capitol had already won. He handed her the small tea packet they had disguised it in. She trusted him. She drank it, and minutes later her body collapsed in his arms. He held her, just like in the arena, her eyes wide with pain, her lips whispering, "Wife?" Haymitch screamed into the night. The Capitol had taken her, and they had used him to do it. That night, something inside Haymitch died forever. The boy with hope? Gone. In his place stood a haunted soul, forever scarred. Days turned into weeks. He barely left his home. The nightmares were relentless. Faces, screams, blood. He began drinking, not to celebrate, but to forget. Each bottle dulled the guilt. Each sip made it easier to breathe. And slowly the Capitol faded from his doorsteps. They had made their point. Do not defy U.S. And Haymitch? He was left broken, alone. And no one understood. No one could understand. Years passed. He mentored tributes, watched them die. Again. And again. Each death reopened the wound. He gave advice, yes. But he never got close. Because deep down, he believed something horrible. Everyone he loves will die. That belief became his shield, his curse, his truth. And that is why the man we see later, the man who trains Katniss Everdeen, is not just an alcoholic. He is a survivor of psychological torture, a victim of a system that destroys even its winners. And yet in that darkness a flicker of resistance remained. Because Haymitch never forgot, never forgave. Haymitch was broken but not defeated. But when another rebellion begins to stir, one sparked by a girl with a mockingjay pin, will he finally get the chance to fight back? Haymitch Abernathy was still breathing, but he was not truly living. Years had passed since his victory. Since he had poisoned the love of his life, since the capital had crushed his spirit. But deep inside that broken man, a fire still burned. A fire the capital thought they had extinguished. In District 12, Haymitch became the only living victor. Which meant one thing. Every year, during the reaping, he had to escort 2 young tributes to their death. And every year, he watched them die, one by one. He told himself he would not get attached. He drank. He distanced himself. He told them the truth. You're going to die. Some people called him heartless, but inside, Haymitch was drowning in guilt, because every tribute reminded him of Lenore. Every death echoed her last breath. But then something changed. Something unexpected. Something impossible. A girl volunteered. Not just any girl. Katniss Everdeen. She stepped forward to save her sister. Her eyes were burning with courage. Her spirit was stronger than fear. And for the first time in years, Haymitch saw hope. He saw a spark, just like the one he used to carry. But the capital still watched him. Still controlled him. So he played the fool. He stumbled. He drank. He acted careless. But behind the scenes, he was plotting. He studied Katniss. He saw how she connected with the people. How she defied the rules. Not out of rebellion, but out of love. Just like he once did. He saw in her what the capital feared most. A symbol. A spark. A threat. And so, Haymitch made a choice. For the first time since Lenore's death. He fought back. He manipulated the sponsors. He protected Katniss and Peeta. He sent them bread, water, salvation. He outwitted the capital. Again. But this time, he did not do it for himself. He did it for something greater. Something stronger. A future. As Katniss began to rise, so did the whispers of rebellion. Districts started watching. The mockingjay became more than just a pin. She became a symbol of resistance. And behind her, guiding her, standing in the shadows, was the man who knew the capital's cruelty better than anyone. Haymitch Abernathy, the mentor, the strategist, the survivor. But even as the rebellion grew stronger, Haymitch knew the cost. He knew the capital would strike back. And they did. With fire. With bombs. With blood. They tried to turn Peeta into a weapon. They tried to break Katniss. But through it all, Haymitch stayed by her side. He gave her what no one else could. Not sympathy, but truth. And in doing so, he began to heal. Not completely. The scars remained. The pain was still there. But for the first time in years, he had purpose. He had family. And he had revenge. The capital thought they had broken him. But instead, they had created their worst enemy. Because Haymitch knew their games. He knew their fears. And now he had something stronger than fear. Haymitch helped ignite the flames of rebellion. But when the smoke clears, and the capital falls, what becomes of a man who has lost everything? Will he find peace? Or will the ghosts of his past still haunt him? Welcome back to where it all began. Sunrise on the Reaping is not just a tale of survival. It is the foundation. the beating heart, behind the world we came to know in the Hunger Games. This is where past and present finally collide. As we step deeper into the aftermath of Haymitch's haunting victory, Suzanne Collins does something brilliant. She connects the dots between the scars of the past and the revolution of the future. We finally understand why Haymitch acted the way he did in the Hunger Games trilogy. Why he drank. Why he distanced himself. Why he never trusted the capital. It was not just grief. It was trauma. Haymitch did not just win the games. He beat the capital. And they never forgave him. They killed the one he loved. They reminded him year after year that no one is ever really free. But now we see that his story is more than just pain. It is the reason he became the mentor who helped Katniss and Peeta survive. Because he knew what they were up against. He knew the games were never fair. He knew the capital played with people's souls. And so, when he saw Katniss, when he saw the girl who volunteered for her sister, he saw the spark again. But what we never knew until this book is that Haymitch was not a stranger to Katniss's family. He was once close friends with Burdock Everdeen, Katniss's father. Yes, you heard that right. Haymitch and Burdock shared more than just a district. They shared values. They shared hope. And that explains everything. It explains why Haymitch fought so hard to keep Katniss and Peeta alive. Why he believed in her. Why he risked everything to keep her strong. Because Katniss was not just a tribute. She was the daughter of his friend. A friend who once stood by Haymitch when the whole district turned away. A friend who believed that even in darkness we could still choose light. Katniss did not know that. Peeta never knew. But for Haymitch it made every moment personal. Every risk. Every plan. Every rebellion. It was not just about survival anymore. It was about honor. It was about redemption. Through Katniss, Haymitch had the chance to protect the only piece of his past that still had meaning. And when the revolution began, when District 13 rose from the ashes, Haymitch stood ready, not as a drunk, but as a man who had seen it all, who had lost it all, and who refused to let the capital win again. That is what Sunrise on the Reaping gives us. It fills in the gaps. It deepens the meaning. It shows us that every moment in the original trilogy was shaped by what happened years before. We finally see Haymitch not just as a mentor, not just as a broken man, but as a legend, a bridge between pain and purpose, a man who helped light the flame that became the Mockingjay. Now that we know the truth about Haymitch's past, about his connection to Katniss, his trauma, his sacrifice, we are left with one final question. When the battle is over and the capital falls, what becomes of the heroes who were never meant to survive? Is there peace after the games? Or is survival just another beginning? Sunrise on the Reaping is not just a prequel, it's a powerful journey into the heart of Haymitch Abernathy's past. This story explores trauma, resilience, and the untold sacrifices of a man who became a symbol of rebellion. Haymitch's struggles, from the horrors of the games to his mentorship of Katniss, show us how pain can forge strength, and how hope can rise from the darkest places. Through his eyes, we understand the true cost of resistance, and the unwavering spirit that fights back against tyranny. Haymitch's legacy lives on in the flames of revolution.